There was a time, not many years ago, we said data is new oil. And there is a new quote coming up from none other than, I don't know how to start it, okay. Mark Getty, so the founder of Getty Images, saying intellectual property is new oil of 20th century. And he's not far. What he is talking about is he has built up an entire marketplace of exchanging photographs, which we thought is not a big deal, and $1 billion industry out of it. And the reason he was able to do it is because of intellectual property protection he got. People cannot use anybody's clicked photograph without their license, without their authorization, and hence this industry, hence this entire business that we are talking about. Having said that, when we say IP, intellectual property, patents, trademark, copyrights, they do appear very fluffy, very complex, very legal terms. And unfortunately, as a nation, we have been dealing it in a way which has made it a lot more complex than what it is. On a very, very, very simplistic fundamental level, IP is just another tool when you are doing a business, when you are in an industry, when you are contributing to an industry or running your own business. IP is just another business tool. And if we try and run it as a business, we see the kind of impact that it is creating for the organization, for yourself, for people around the globe, for the society as a whole. And at an individual level, when we are talking about IP and talking about patents in particular, early in my career, I guess 20 years back or something, we were working with Google, and their point of view was they wanted people working in certain specific technology areas, not based on their resumes, based on the patent work that they have done. So this is the kind of impact that we are talking about from an individual point of view, and this is exactly what organizations are looking at now. We talk about startups ecosystem now. We have Zomato having close to 70 odd patents already, and they are just a delivery platform, but then they are able to do it for multiple reasons on how their algorithm work, how it gets you connected to the best or maybe the most clickable possible restaurant or the dish that you need at that point of time. We have Arthur Energy, who is revolutionizing the battery technology. We have all the more things that are, I mean, pretty much every funded startup that we are looking at now, they are doing it with IP as being one of the component of their entire ecosystem. And it's really picking up at this point of time, not really there at the level where it should be, but then that's where it's reaching now. Very briefly speaking, Mr. Saha has gone into a lot of detail here, so I'll not spend too much of time here. Intellectual property on a very, very fundamental level, at very first principle level, is just a creation of mind. You face a problem, let's say a technology problem, you find a solution. If that solution is novel, that's your possibility of getting a patent. You come out with a tagline which is catchy, or a name which is catchy. Delivery, we had a dispute there. The name of the brand, the name of the company, you have, that's there. You cannot sell another brand, your own soft drink in the name of Coca-Cola. You cannot sell it in the name of Pepsi. That's what the distinctiveness is all about. You talk about that. This is about trademarks. When we are talking about, for example, having your own codes, maybe even an open source code, you are really talking about copyrights. You do not want your open source code even to be used without right license. Let's take an example of Red Hat. Red Hat had more than 185 patents. It's an open source company which is built upon Linux. So that's the kind of impact that we are talking about. It is something that has been intervened into businesses, mostly outside India, almost for last 50 years, if not more. And we have seen the kind of value it has created for the organizations. Interestingly, from 85 to what we are looking at 2020s, intangible assets, we are talking about only Fortune 500 companies. In 1985s, around 1985s, intangible assets valued less than the tangible assets, your machinery, your plant, your people, etc. Your brand value, your patents were valued less than the tangible assets. It went thrice in the span of 10 years, 3 times. Next 10 years, it went 4 times. 2020, we are talking about 5 times and more. And now we are sitting at 24, possibly this number would be more than that. You see, tangible assets we are talking about of Fortune 500 company is around $5 billion, $4 billion, and intangible assets, which primarily includes intellectual property of different kind, that is $21 billion in valuation. So that's the value that we are talking about, and that's the impact that we are talking about. And this becomes a lot more important for startups who are trying to raise funds. And that doesn't mean that they have to be a technology, deep tech kind of a startup. Any startup is something that is looking for valuation. You want to start your own organization, this is the way to go. You want to contribute to a business, be in an industry, this is the way to go. Coming on to how industry views intellectual property. So one part is getting the protection right. And that's the starting point, that's where it starts. Once that protection is secured, that's where the industry pitches in, and that's where they want to use it. Let's say you come out with a very simplistic, user-friendly design. Let's talk about a very cliche example. Apple has got slide and unlock feature. To unlock the phone, you have to slide it horizontally. Unlike Samsung or others or OnePlus, which can be unlocked by moving in any direction. When Apple was launched, it started with the same concept, horizontal slide and unlock. Samsung came up, nobody from Samsung here, right? Yeah. So Samsung pretty much copied Apple iPhone in a very blatant violation. They even copied slide and unlock feature, horizontal slide and unlock feature. Apple had this thing patented, horizontal slide and unlock. It's not a technical issue. It's just a distinctive feature, so to say that. The way Apple had positioned it was, when you hold a phone, thumb is your only finger which is available, and this is the only action that can happen. You cannot move in any other direction unless you are holding it in a different hand. They got this patented. This litigation went to US Supreme Court, Federal Circuit basically, in the Europe as well. Samsung was found to be in violation. They had to pay $1 billion to Apple, and they had to obviously stop using it. And that's when they came up with a software update where they removed that bit, and it can be unlocked in any direction now. And this would have been enough to kill most companies. It was Samsung, it survived. But most companies would not have survived this onslaught. That's how industry look at intellectual property. Small little things, maybe a technical solution, maybe not, maybe just a distinctive features, maybe not, maybe just a code to make something more efficient, or maybe just a brand recall. That's how industry look at it. That's what gives it competitive advantage. Financial value, we just spoke about it, the kind of intangible assets that we are talking about. When we are talking about startups with patents, as per one of the WIPO studies, with patents are valued almost 60% more than startups which do not have their own IP. Coming on to the market growth, for anybody having a global ambition and soon be in India, without IP, you will not be able to succeed, and people are already facing that heat. we just saw India's biggest patent damages award. Lava phone, I think some of you would have remembered there were lava phones some time back. How many of us remembers lava phone? Yeah, quite a few. And they disappeared from the market. Ericsson came after them, you are violating 8 of our patents. Litigation went on, and very recently, Delhi High Court has found Lava to be infringing those patents of Ericsson, and they are supposed to pay 300 crores worth the damages. Close to 300 crores, so 245 to be precise. That's a massive number. And that is the kind of growth that we are talking about. And look at the way Ericsson is, say Nokia from phone making company doesn't sell phone, but the revenue is still running into billions, their profits are still running into billions. How? One of the major source of revenue is the patents that they have filed. So their number of patents runs into maybe close to 50,000, 60,000. They are licensing their patents to who's who of the world, and they are generating huge amount of revenue, much more than their telecom equipment business generated at the peak of its time. Way more than that. That's the kind of impact that we are talking about for a larger organization. For even smaller organization, we are saying that people are going and getting the multiples of their valuations. They are able to stop their competition from copying their brand names, trade names, technology, so on and so forth. And it's going to get more complex as India continues to become more and more IP friendly, with large damages being awarded, people being restrained from copying this thing. So I don't know how many of us know that you can't use Bollywood music in commercial events anymore without license. Are we even aware of that? How many of us? So a lot of us. But then there was a time, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years back, you go to Italy, you go to France, you go to anywhere in the world, you will find Bollywood music running in almost every second cafe. Why? Because there wasn't protection out there. 10 years things have changed, and next 10 years we are going to see that possibility to run a Bollywood music in India, and we are still seeing it, but then it would be a lot more prominent to use Bollywood music or a dance show or maybe even a DJ. That's not going to be very easy to do. And we are getting into a market, we are getting into an ecosystem where IP is going to be the new oil, what Katie spoke about. Coming on to how IP is being used by companies, getting into specific use cases on expanding the market, getting the valuation, excluding the competition. Let's take an example. All of us know Bajaj Pulsar. Let's go back to history. Let's rewind a little bit. When Bajaj Pulsar was launched, at the same time TVS Freedom was another bike that was launched that doesn't exist anymore, I think. At least I don't remember. They were competition, both coming from big houses, technology houses with deep pockets, all connected, so on and so forth. It was supposed to be the competition in the bikes arena getting heated up. Bajaj came out with an excellent strategy. They had filed patents on certain part of the engine technologies, and went against TVS Freedom, which was their direct competition at that point of time. Went to Delhi High Court. Long story short, they got injunction against TVS Freedom for 3 years. So that basically means that TVS cannot sell Freedom bikes for 3 years. And 3 years is a long, long period in business cycle. Bajaj has captured the market by then, irrespective of their patent was valid, invalid, without going into the merits of the case. They used it as a business tool. They derailed their competition big time, and TVS could never recover from it. And how many of us even know that TVS has a bike section anymore? So that's what the situation is. That's what the power of IP is. Then another way the startups and even individuals benefit from IP is primarily cutting short their cycle to market. You do not have to reinvent your wheel. If there's something that exists, a technology that has been developed already, you take that technology, license it from somebody, build upon it, make it better, have your own IP, move forward, get better than that. You don't try and reinvent a Facebook again. You always try and come up with something better. You take a license of technology, move forward, build upon it, and your time to market goes down very, very significantly. And this is something that happens very, very common across the globe, especially in the industry. That's how the Nokia is generating revenue, because they have developed the technology of 6G, what they say, 5G, 6G. They are people do not have to redevelop the technology, take the license, build upon it, go for 6.5G, or at least just use it in your products and move forward. Then we are talking about cross license. If you want to enter to somebody else's zone, market, customer, they would obviously want to stop you. They would come after you with all their might, and at the end of the day, their most potent tool is still going to be IP. The only way to balance it out is to have your own IP that somebody else is using. That's how you can create a balance with somebody like Nokia or Ericsson or even anybody else as a startup. This is something that gives you a route to enter to a market which you cannot enter. Google and Apple at certain point of time, they had close to 150 odd patent litigations against each other. And that was after running it for 3 years, some sane minds on the both sides realized this is a mutual destruction. The only guys who are getting rich in this is lawyers. We are both using each other's technology, we are both using each other's patents, and there is no point in fighting, so let's just shut it off and close it off. So that's how they could enter into each other's territory, and there is Google Play Store and Apple Play Store is able to coexist, or Apple Maps and Google Maps are able to coexist. And then another very exotic way, or rather I would say unless somebody is quite proficient in that, it looks like royalty generation is something that cannot happen. So you license your technology, take a certain amount of royalty out of it. So it's more like what Mr. Saha mentioned. It's a property, and you can license that property, you can rent that property. So you license your technology, license your IP, get the royalty out of it, and you continue to do that. And it looks like it's only for big guys. A personal friend of mine, several years ago, we were working together. He came out with a concept that on a laptop pad, mouse pad, if you run your 2 fingers together, mouse should move twice as fast or thrice as fast, so that your cursor goes from this end to this end of the screen faster, rather than doing it for the 3 times. That was a time he was an individual, he had a patent, he in fact developed a prototype for, it's not a rocket science, but he was able to do it. He was funded by Dell, his company was later acquired in a year and a half time, and then he continued to improve upon it. So I'm talking about an individual with not even having an ambition of becoming an entrepreneur. That's where this journey took a turn. Okay, and then we spoke about patents can be licensed, patents can be sold. In one of my earlier experiences, in one of my assignments, we developed a technology of nanoparticles that allows 3D viewing, etc. There was a Philips lab. As an organization, we had no money to scale it up. We used that set of patents, 34 patents, as a security, raised, in a simplistic term, raised a loan against those patents from a Dutch investor. Went to a Japanese company, showcased them, this is how it works and we are cheaper than whatever you are doing, so why don't you license our technology? They gave us a PO. Based on that PO, we were able to take it forward. So it's a complex thing, but long story short, this can be used as a security if you are a business, if you are in industry. In certain cases, if it might even be individuals. So India spoke about IP-based financing in last budget 2 years back, 3 years back. The rules are yet to be formed, but this is a very, very, I would say, a mature and sophisticated ecosystem in US and Europe, where you would see a lot of banks using your IP as a security and giving you loan to start your startup or even scale it up. So we spoke about some of the case studies, some of the interesting guys who did it little differently. Pfizer saw that generic drug makers are able to eat into its market, and they're still doing it. They tried every regulation, every way to control it. They could control it. Their market was going down. They were getting beaten up. They obviously cannot compete on prices. So they came out with a very innovative model. They said, we have patents on, why are you waiting for patents to expire 20 years and then make a generic? For some of the formulations, we will give you license to our patents, which are close to expiry, or maybe they are not, I would say, the most high margin products for them. We'll give you the license, and we'll not give license to all the generics. We're going to give you license to only first 5 with them. So within the generic landscape, a lot of industries, a lot of companies decided that we need to have first mover advantage within the generic landscape. So let's move forward. So that's an interesting way Pfizer did that. They still have this program which is running quite successfully, generating huge amount of revenue, and certain pharmaceutical generic companies have been immensely benefited out of it. Nike or Pizza Hut or Domino's, what we see, they've gone the franchisee model. They are licensing their own know-how, their trademarks. And why would you say that a franchisee would take a franchisee of Domino's, they would learn everything in a year's time, open their own store which is similar? No. The look and feel of the store, look and feel of the branding, the recipe that are being followed, the brand name of Domino's, Pizza Hut, etc., they are all protected by IP. Even if you take a franchisee, run it for several years, you can't come up with your own something which is quite similar. So Nike has gone really global with that. Apple is, there's no point in talking about Apple. They are who's who of IP world. Tesla did something very interesting. Tesla filed huge number of patents on driverless cars, etc. At the time of the start, when they were starting new, they said, we are opening up all our IP free of any license. Whosoever wants to come in, just come in, join the force, start manufacturing of their own. And this is something that went in long way in opening up the industry of EV-based industry, driverless car industry, so on and so forth. But there was a fine print. What they did was they still held a lot of critical patents on self-driving technology. They opened up their entire portfolio. They made it free to use for everyone in EV space, but they controlled that driverless space for themselves. So that's the reason EV space, EV industry is picking up across the globe. Driverless car is still a challenge for most people because it's difficult to get past Tesla, who has close to 4,500 patent, which is data 2 years back. It could be maybe another several thousand added more to it. So they have been able to manipulate market rather I would say IP is a tool to influence the market in your ways. You want to control your margin, you have a new product, you don't want a competition in that space, you control it with your IP, keep the competition out, you continue to have 25, 30, 40% margin on this as long as it works, move to the next product by the time competition is able to jump in. So broadly, that is what IP is all about from a business point of view, from an individual point of view. And do we have any questions here? Because I'm at the last slide, and here we are talking about something slightly different. So any questions that we have right now? No, great, okay. So coming on to the IP getting ingrained into Indian psyche is something which is very counterintuitive. In India, we always believe knowledge comes for free. The more you spread, the better it is. That's how our gurukuls worked. Unfortunately, the times have changed, and we are taking a lot of time to change. But we are on the path. Quicker the better for the nation, for the organization that you are going to work in or you are working in, and for you as an individual, whether as a business owner or a contributor to an organization. What we need right now is from incubators, from mentors, from even at the teaching level, first and fundamental level, from a very, very fundamental level, what we are saying is respect third-party intellectual property, respect somebody else's painting, respect somebody else's photograph, respect somebody else's composition on poem or a song or anything, and try and own it up, your own creations. Try and own it up. That is something that's going to create a difference in the kind of impact that you're going to create in future, or the next generation is going to do for the nation. So having a right guidance is important. Having right resources is very important, and we see government is putting in a lot of efforts. We have Atal Tinkering Labs is one such big step in that direction. A lot needs to be done, but it's still a huge step. And networking is one bit that you need to bring academia, industry, startups, incubators, everybody on one platform to have that exchange of ideas, to understand each other's problems, to sensitize each other on IP, and to even help a lot of good guys. So I do meet some of those guys who come up with the brilliant ideas, amazing ideas, but then they say, I had this idea, I made a presentation to a founder, he copied it, I can't do anything about it. Of course you can't, because you have not patented it, or you have not documented it in certain way. And then this is something that needs to become part of the mentorship. This is something that we need to teach our children. They are the next generation. Because personally, I'm not going to feel good if creation of my daughter poem is get copied by somebody else. And similarly is the respect for third-party IP. I don't want them to get into trouble for using somebody else's IP or their thing getting derailed for certain reason. So this is a time for startups, for incubators, for all mentors to make sure that we take this movement, seize this movement. Government is putting in huge amount of efforts. We have had 1 lakh patents getting granted in an year's time, and thanks to Mr. Unnat Pandit, who will be joining us soon. We are looking at a much tighter landscape of IP, and there is no running away. We are here, either we will be leading it, we'll be either in midst of it, or we'll be left behind like a dinosaur. So that's our individual choice, organization choice, and yeah, so that's where I end my talk.